All right, so today, public benefits from private forests with Ron Gropp. Before we fully get started, I just want to give you a little bit of background information about LEAF, who are helping to bring you this presentation today. So LEAF is Wisconsin's K-12 forestry education program, and it is our mission to connect formal and non-formal educators in Wisconsin with quality forestry education materials. So our goal is to help you as educators and as professionals reach our students in Wisconsin. We are a partnership between the Wisconsin DNR Division of Forestry and the Wisconsin Center for Environmental Education here at the College of Natural Resources at UWSP. And as you can see, we reach out all over the state. So maybe you'll see yourself in a dot on the map from a previous outreach effort we've had or professional development. And if not, get in touch with us. We're more than happy to come to you when we can, once again. How do we help you reach your students? We do that through various different opportunities. Professional development for educators. So normally we like to visit you in person with trainings or workshops, but on or times like this, these training sessions via computer and remote options are how we're hoping to help you. We have curriculum material available on our website, lesson plans and things that are free to download. We also have hands-on forestry education tools that you can borrow or borrow from us throughout the state. And then we also provide support for outdoor classrooms. Many of you are familiar with our school forest program, but we also have Wisconsin's Project Learning Tree program with us as well. So before we get started, a little bit more about myself. My name is Gretchen Marshall. I work with LEAF, and my main focus in the LEAF program is to help our school forest educators with lessons and management and access to their school forest properties. And we do have a few other LEAF staff members on today's Zoom as well. If you would just very, very quickly put your monitors or your screens back on and give a quick wave with your name and a quick introduction, that would be great. Nicole?
Hi, I'm Steve Schmidt. Oh,
Steve?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And I'm assisting Gretchen as co-host today. I'm with LEAF.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm with LEAF mainly through Project Learning Tree, and I'm excited to be here to learn with you all today.
Hi, I'm Jenny Christopher, and I am communications coordinator at the WC.
Jenny, we can't hear you very well, but that's Jenny. She takes care of a lot of our communication things. So the newsletters that you receive, social media, and so forth, our website, she helps handle and take care of that. So thanks, Jenny. Anybody else?
I'm Brian Mitchell. I'm with the Wisconsin DOT, and I try to stay in touch with DNR and what goes on in the rest of the state. I'm the Business Relationships Manager out of the Office of the Secretary. And,
thank you.
Where my links are.
All right. With that, I am going to introduce our speaker today. Ron Gropp is a private forestry specialist with the Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry. Ron has been with the DNR since 2007. And prior to that, he worked for 15 years with the Utah DNR Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands, where he held several positions involving both forest and fire management capacities. Ron holds a bachelor's degree in forest management from UW-Madison. And Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you could please introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Gretchen. That sounds great. Let me share my screen here, and hopefully we can. All right.
Looks good.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Gretchen, for that introduction. Yeah, let me just begin by saying how happy I am to be here to be able to present with everyone here. I'd like to talk a little bit more about who I am Before we get started, I do appreciate the introduction that Gretchen provided there. But again, my name is Ron Gropp. I am a private forestry specialist with the Wisconsin DNR Division of Forestry. And as Gretchen mentioned earlier, the first half of my career I spent out west after graduating from the University of Wisconsin-Madison way back in 1991. So I know I'm dating myself there. So I spent about 15 years there. And then back in 2007, we decided to migrate back home. I grew up in Wisconsin. I am a Wisconsinite. I grew up in northern Wisconsin, enjoying the outdoors and the many benefits and amenities that our outdoor and our natural resources provide. It is where I essentially gained a true and genuine appreciation for everything that our natural world provides us. And so it really led me to a career in natural resources, which is where I pursued my background in forestry at UW-Madison. With that, I'm going to go ahead and we'll jump right in and begin with a couple of real basic forestry facts as it relates to the public benefits of Wisconsin's private forests. So this first slide here is really about setting the stage. I'm giving you a context about, I guess, the expanse and the vastness of Wisconsin's forests. All right. So here in Wisconsin, we have almost 17 million acres that are considered forest in the state. And that is, if you put that into context of what that looks like, from a statewide perspective, that's an area that's larger than the entire state of West Virginia. So when you think about that, that's a very vast expanse of forest here in the state of Wisconsin. Now, these private forests provide a multitude of benefits, including economic, social, and obviously ecological benefits as well. And we'll continue to talk more about those as we go through the presentation here. So when we talk about Wisconsin's private forests, we know that 17 million acres in Wisconsin are forested. The majority of those acres are owned by private forest landowners, roughly 12 million acres. And that represents roughly 426,000 individuals and families. They are the largest ownership group here in the state. And you can see the little pie chart here that gives you a further breakdown of what that looks like, private versus public ownership here in the state. So when we talk about private forestry in Wisconsin, it's a big deal. It's 12 million acres, and it's a lot of landowners that we try to work with and provide the services that we offer, in addition to the broader network of partners that we work with as well, to make sure that private landowners have the resources they have to take an action on their property. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as well after we get through the kind of the basic facts here. Real quickly, sugar maple is our state tree, selected by school children in 1893, way back early in our statehood. Another interesting forestry fact here is that, and I think you'll come to appreciate this as we continue on with the conversation, 64% of the raw materials needed by our forest products industry comes from private lands. So again, when you think about private forestry, private lands, and the impact that forest management has on our daily lives, and we think about the forest products industry and how important that is here in Wisconsin, just know that the majority of those raw forest products that our industry relies on really comes from private forest lands. And what I want to do is sort of talk about that economic impact. So we all know that forests in general, primarily here in Wisconsin, private forestry contributes socially, ecologically, and economically. Just as an example, here in Wisconsin, the economic contribution of private forestry here in Wisconsin is the second leading contributor. So when you think about that, 63,000 jobs, 24 billion in output, another 6.4 billion in value added for almost, well, that's over 30 billion combined from a dollar standpoint in our from an economic standpoint. So it's really important that we see these private lands being managed in an appropriate manner, and which is why our focus is reaching out to landowners and making sure that they have those resources to continue to offer these materials to the economic sector here in the state. And by the way, and everyone probably knows the answer to the question here. I just want to throw it out there just for a little, fun time. What is Wisconsin's leading economic contributor? I don't know if anyone can answer or anything like that, but I don't know if we can, folks can answer through the chat or what, but I just thought I'd throw that up there just for.
No, that's a good question, Ron. This is Gretchen. Yeah, if you do have questions as we go along or to answer any of Ron's questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And then Steve and I will keep an eye on that, and we can ask as we go, or we'll have a question and answer time at the end as well.
That sounds great. Well, if you can throw the answer up through the chat, hold it to the end, and then we can kind of talk through what that economic contribution is to Wisconsin. Okay, a little bit more about the forest products industry in terms of what they provide. 1,200 forest products companies in Wisconsin operating statewide. Many of us know some of the traditional products that are produced by our forests: paper, wood, veneer, particle board, furniture, things in those regards. There are also some specialty non-timber forest products that some of us are, really familiar with, like maple syrup, wild ginseng. Carbon is one that is sort of a new one when we look at the impact that global climate change is having on our on our society. More and more, some of our larger timber owners and even smaller non-addressable private forest landowners are looking to carbon as a way to as a public benefit in terms of sequestering carbon on their properties. And so that's really becoming more of a specialty non-timber forest product that we're seeing. I want to switch gears here now and talk a little bit more about some of the other public benefits. We know it's not all about economic and money. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the sociological benefits that our private forests have here in Wisconsin, and a little bit about forest certification and what that is. So Wisconsin leads the nation with nearly 7.5 million acres certified. 2.6 million acres of those acres that are certified are private forests. And so, well, why is this important? Well, for a couple of reasons. First, more and more industry is looking for certified wood because their constituents are looking to buy forest products that are sourced from certified lands. And so the forest products industry is really interested in certification. And so we want to make sure that private lands, all lands for that matter, but particularly private lands here in Wisconsin that are certified are holding up to third-party certification standards, and it's an assurance to the public that Wisconsin's forests are being managed sustainably for the long term. And so the standards that are put forth through the Sustainable Forestry Initiative and the Forest Certification Council are really important certification platforms that Wisconsin is engaged in here. So again, 2.6 million acres in Wisconsin owned by private landowners are certified. Let's see, forest recreation. We all know how important forest recreation is, tremendously important to folks here in state and out of state. And just a couple, as we all know, hunting, fishing, fall foliage are really important contributors here in terms of the solitude that we seek as we look for those opportunities. Private lands are certainly all part of that. There are nearly, if I remember correctly, nearly 2 million acres of privately owned forests that are open to the public for recreational activities, including hunting, fishing, sightseeing, hiking, and things in those regards. And so that's a really important component. We hear from our constituents that access to forests, both publicly owned and privately owned, are really important. And so we look for opportunities whereby we can increase and expand those opportunities with things like conservation easements, for example, where we're acquiring certain development rights on large ownerships. We want to make sure that the public has the right to access those properties so that they can continue to recreate on those properties. And so that's really an important public benefit that our private forests provide to folks here in the state. Of course, our cultural resources and values, archaeological sites, burial sites, some of the historical structures that we find across the state. Now, we know for those that occur on state-owned land and other federally owned properties, we know where those are. We know that there is a tremendous resource that occurs on private lands that we don't know about because we don't know where they actually are unless someone tells us where they are. But these are resources and values that are extremely important to the citizens of Wisconsin in terms of telling our story and what it means. They enrich our lives in terms of really understanding how these lands were used traditionally, historically, with Native Americans, how our ancestors used the land. When we talk about some of the historical structures, I'm talking about some of these old logging camps, some of the CCC sites that are still out there. And we know that these are extremely beneficial to citizens here in Wisconsin, understanding how they impact our lives going forward. And then, of course, we've got the ecological benefits of clean water, clean air, wildlife, erosion control. We know that private lands provide all of these opportunities as well. So for example, when we talk about water, and forestry as it relates to forestry and forestry practices, meeting or exceeding our high quality water standards through what we call forestry best management practices, right? So when loggers are out harvesting timber and conducting timber harvesting practices, we want to make sure that they are applying a certain standard in terms of minimizing in-stream sedimentation, for example. Right. So we all know that sedimentation affects water quality. It affects aquatic life. We want to make sure that we keep all of that stuff out of our waters. Likewise for air. I was just reading, in fact, last week, a recent study, and I just want to make sure that I get this right. So basically October last month, a study came out that indicates over a 15-year period, data was analyzed that indicates the air quality here in Wisconsin is as good as it's ever been, where we've got 95% of the population living in areas where our air quality standards exceed the federal levels out there. So, and we all know the connection there is, just forests generally, broadly speaking, contribute to clean air, but certainly with the majority of our forests being owned by private owners, that's a huge contribution. And then, of course, wildlife. We all know how important that is. I don't know if many of you are aware, but we have here in Wisconsin some globally significant habitats that support both threatened and endangered species. For example, our pine barrens up in northwest Wisconsin, globally significant in that regard. And so, home to numerous species of wildlife. We understand how important the wildlife is to, again, kind of the social aspect when we talk about not only managing these threatened and endangered species and making sure that they're cared for over time, but also the social impact benefit that we have when we're out, hunting and things in those regards, and what that means to us. So A lot of that is really the benefit of private forestry and the impact that that has on the citizens here in Wisconsin as well. So another tremendous public benefit there. All right. So I think I want to switch gears here a little bit. So we've talked a little bit, hopefully I've set the stage pretty well here with kind of giving you a pretty good picture about the benefits, the values that private forests provide here to the citizens in the state of Wisconsin. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about now, but okay, well, what do we do? How do we help private landowners manage their forest resources? And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about what that looks like. And I threw this slide up here just to show you that even though some of the facts that I talked about earlier were really about, all right, and it's a tremendous economic contribution. Private forest landowners are the largest ownership group that we work with here in Wisconsin, and yet only 25% of family forest owners have a forest management plan to help guide their decisions and their actions. So if that's true, the opposite obviously is true, is that the majority of the landowners in Wisconsin don't. Now, not that they're doing management that is typically bad. We just don't know. We don't understand what they're doing. And so we just want to know more about that. And so for us here in Wisconsin, at least with DNR and our Division of Forestry, our private forestry program, our vision, our mission statement, if you will, is we want to ensure that landowners are guided by plan, connected to resource professionals, and are actively engaged in making informed decisions about the management of their woodland. And so there's really kind of a lot packed in there. So let me just explain that a little bit more. It's really about understanding where landowners are on what we call the landowner engagement continuum. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of slides. In fact, I think it's the next slide up. We just really want to understand first where they are, understanding that, of course, landowners who own property, own forests, span the full spectrum of, I'm really nervous about doing something. I'm a new landowner, for example. I don't really know what to do, versus I've owned this land. It's been in our family, and we've been, harvesting timber for the last, 20, 50 years, and I know what we need to do, and everyone in between. And we just want to make sure that landowners are really set up for success if and when they do decide to take that first step, that first action on their property. And it's really about making sure that they have an understanding. And that plan, by the way, doesn't necessarily have to be something formal. It could be something that's really quite simple. We want to make sure that they're connected to resources that help them carry out that plan, and then make sure that they've got all the information that they need in order to make a well-informed decision. So let me talk a little bit about the model, the landowner engagement continuum. So recognizing that, of course, the largest landowner group here in Wisconsin is private forest landowners, we developed a model, if you will. We call it the landowner engagement continuum. And let me just explain this a little bit so that you get a better understanding of what our thought process was when we were going into this. So when you look at the inverted triangle here, starting from the wide area here, acquisition really is about acquiring landowners, right? So landowners who are new landowners, or particularly new landowners, but landowners who have never, had any sort of private forestry assistance, a natural resource professional visit them, or they've never really sought out any sort of technical or financial assistance to help them along. So we're really interested in making sure that we're working with those landowners to ensure that they have those resources. So it's really about acquiring landowners, right? And so getting them to the door. How do you get them to the door, right? And so and It talk a little bit more about this as well, but it's really about outreach, education to get them to the door, and then moving them along the continuum. And most of it is really in this, what we call this acquisition phase, getting new landowners to come to the door, right? Raising their hand, say, yep, I'm interested in that. Cultivation is more about the relationship building aspect. Once we get them to the door, we get them through the door, and it's really about now building that relationship with the landowner so that they're comfortable with taking that next step, whatever that step is, right? And so there's really no preconceived idea or notion about what the outcome is. We just want to make sure that landowners are in a good position to take those steps and that journey, if you will, on their own. And then, of course, the last piece here is implementation. So the idea being that once a landowner is ready, they feel comfortable taking that next step, how do we connect them to the resources they need to make sure that that happens? And so here in Wisconsin, what we've done, I'll talk more about this later as well, is we've partnered with the Aldo Leopold Foundation and through the My Wisconsin Woods program that they have. All right. And so part of what I want to really talk about here is the partnership. Here at Wisconsin DNR, we realize we certainly serve a niche, a role, if you will. We certainly understand that we can't do it all. And so partnerships are really key and really important for us moving forward with our initiative here to engage new landowners. And so we partnered with the Aldo Leopold Foundation and through their My Wisconsin Woods webpage, and I encourage you to go there. Here is where landowners who for whatever reason are interested in forest management is a one-stop shop, if you will, where they, at their leisure, they can kind of click through and find other partners, other resources that are out there. And oh, by the way, if they get to a point where they want to meet with a DNR forester, which is what we're really looking for, is they can request a free property visit. And that's one of the services that we offer is a free property visit with landowners, so that, again, it's really the start of building the relationship with that landowner. And so what they do is they can click on the county in which they live or where their property resides, and up pops the, in this case in Bayfield County, the DNR forester. And so they get a real quick bio of who that forester is, what their likes are, kind of the services they offer, along with their contact information and a request for a property visit. So really great. It's been working really well. The other steps that we've taken in an effort to acquire new landowners is media campaign. Now, some of these are more of the tried and true traditional methods, if you will, direct mail, digital print ads, billboards, really just more of a coarse filter approach to hitting as many landowners as possible, if you will, to get to make sure that they're aware of the services that we offer. So that sort of, piques their interest, if you will, and starts to get them to think about, oh yeah, I own 20 acres. I own 40 acres. I haven't really done anything with it. Maybe I should talk to the DNR about that. And so we've initiated a pretty robust media campaign from that standpoint. The other part of our media campaign involves social media. And so what we've done is we've partnered with the American Forest Foundation through their Woods Camp platform to engage new landowners as well. Social media, recognizing the, I guess, the value and benefit, everyone's, tied in electronically, right? And so we wanted to take advantage of, what social media tools and platforms that are out there could do for us. And so through the Woods Camp platform, we've entered into an agreement with the American Forest Foundation to deploy this technology here in Wisconsin. And essentially what it is, through targeted messaging, landowners receive Facebook ads, and that piques their interest based on whatever their interest is. And so the messaging content can be something related to forest health, for example. That tends to resonate with landowners, right? Landowners are concerned about, all the, what we call the bugs and crud, if affecting their trees. And so that really resonates pretty highly with landowners. And so what landowners do is they receive these these Facebook ads, they go to the Woods Camp website. And one of the benefits here is that they get a free management plan through that process. And again, once they get that free report, if you will, of what their property looks like, they then make a connection with the call agent. And that call agent, through that conversation with the landowner, again, this is really about all this, this initial upfront relationship building process with that landowner. I can't, it's really important process to make sure that we understand where these landowners are. And so it's the relationship process is so extremely important here. And so the call agent is really a key step in that process of building that relationship, where we're really trying to understand where they are and if they're interested in meeting with the DNR forester. And again, here it's really about this acquisition phase, right? This is where we're at. Yep, I think I'm at that point where I want to meet with a DNR forester. That information is then fed to us through our database, and our field foresters then make the connection with those landowners to schedule that first landowner interaction, landowner DNR forester interaction. So it works out pretty well. We're really excited about it. We're in year 2 of deploying the platform here, and we've generated roughly, I want to say we're close to 400 landowner walkthroughs, which is really great. Okay, so moving forward, what I want to talk about a little bit here is the cultivation and the implementation phases. So first of all, I think we're always going to be engaged at some level with the acquisition phase, right? We're never going to walk away from that totally, because we want new landowners continuously to come into this forest management realm, if you will, whatever that looks like for them. But at some point, once you get them in the door, right, now we got to figure out, okay, how do we maintain that relationship with them? How do we move them along the continuum, if you will? And so again, that's really about cultivation, building the relationship with the landowner and trying to move them along at their pace. Again, really no preconception of what the outcome is here. It's really about, that journey for the landowner. But at some point, if that landowner decides that, yep, no, I think I want to do something here, I think I need to do something, it's really about making sure that we're connecting those landowners to the resources they need in order to make informed decisions and the resources they need to actually implement that practice, or that suite of practices on the ground, if you will. So I guess the ultimate outcome for our standpoint is more sustainable forest management. The outcome for the landowner is really about where they are and and what that comfort level is. So I think over time, what we'll continue to do is we'll continue to see emphasis and investment in the acquisition phase, but more over time, it's really going to be moving into the maintaining the landowner relationship and the implementation stage as well. So again, I mentioned connecting landowners to resources. Now there's a lot here on this slide, and so let me just try to talk through this. Again, earlier I mentioned partnerships and how key and important partnerships are in this whole endeavor. And so we have a lot of partnerships. This certainly isn't the full breadth of partnerships that we have. This is just a few, but I just wanted to walk through this a little bit with you, just so you have a better understanding of how we're connected in making sure that, again, this is really all about landowners being connected to the resources that they need in order to take that next step. So through UW Extension and their Learn About Your Land series, this is I guess a collection, if you will, of classes that are put on for landowners about management. And they could be something as simple as, learning more about the trees on your property, to, hey, how do I conduct that timber sale? Of course, Wisconsin DNR with our DNR service foresters, our DMAP program, that's our Deer Management Assistance Program. With our wildlife program, we're connected in with that. Again, I'll mention My Wisconsin Woods, the Aldo Leopold Foundation. That's a huge partner for how we want to move forward. Another important aspect of this is peer network groups, right? So making sure that landowners understand that there's a resource for them. If they don't want to come to us, that's perfectly fine. But we also want to make sure that they understand that there is a group out there that they can go to. Wisconsin Woodland Owners Association is a group of about 1,800 non-industrial private forest landowners who have a keen interest in managing sustainable forestry. And so we want to make sure that landowners understand that there is a resource, a peer network, if you will, that they can go to for those sort of educational resources. And of course, I mentioned Woods Camp, American Forest Foundation, that connection there as well. So that's really, really important in terms of how we look at making sure that we're connecting landowners to resources. Now, as you can imagine, what is it that we can offer that they're looking for? Well, in a lot of cases, they're looking for the technical assistance aspect. So that's really key for our DNR service foresters, is to be able to talk to them about the technical aspects of performing an action, for example, writing a management plan, all of the different programs that are available to landowners, right? So there's a number of financial assistance programs out there. And as you can imagine, everything costs money, right? And so forestry practices are no exception to that rule. And so that can oftentimes be a limiting factor, a barrier, if you will. And so we want to really make sure, excuse me, again, that landowners are aware that there are financial assistance programs out there that can help them. Both are either state programs that we administer, that we offer, or federal programs through the Natural Resources Conservation Service, for example. And that's one of our partners down here. They have a number of programs that are essentially geared toward encouraging landowners to manage their property. In some cases, they're given a payment for doing some of these practices, and so it's really a financial incentive, if you will. So again, really making sure that landowners are aware and understand that there are resources out there that can help them take that step. And I think last slide here before we take questions, closing thoughts, just a little quote that I thought was interesting. Is certainly key to what I think, or how I think about what we're doing here in the private forestry realm in DNR. And that is, coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. And so I think when I think about this quote, it really embodies the model that we've put together in terms of acquiring new landowners, and not just new landowners, by the way, landowners who we've always worked with. We've got, we certainly have those landowners who we continue to work with, and we continue to engage them, and we continue to foster and nurture those relationships, if you will. But it's really the new landowners as well that are really important in terms of what that means to the numerous benefits that their properties offer to the greater good here. So when I think about, this quote, it's really about, when you say about coming together as a beginning, it's really the acquisition phase. Staying together as progress, that's really cultivation. That's the relationship building, which is so extremely important in this whole process. And then, of course, working together is success. Connecting that to the implementation stage in terms of when those landowners get to that point, we know that we're going to be there to help them get through that and take that next step. So I think with that, that is all I have. So I think what we'll do is open it up for questions.
Actually, Ron, first, could you turn the screen back over to me
Sure.
for a moment? And I'm going to share my screen again quick. While people we definitely want to move into some question and answer time now. And while people are thinking for questions, and you can keep putting them in the chat, that would be great. I wanted to remind you that we have a few more sessions coming up in this series. Next month, we're going to be focusing on our public forests and what things are offered there. And then looking ahead to January 2021, we'll be taking a look at the forest inventory that takes place in Wisconsin. And then we're still planning out the rest of spring 2021 right now, but I can tell you that we do have March already covered, and we're going to focus on fire management there. And then May, we are going to focus on forest health and particularly take a look at some of our invasive species in our forests. And so we're still working on February and April, but we'll be locking those in soon as well. So just know that we're trying to provide an opportunity for each month that will focus on some sector of forests or forestry in Wisconsin. And so with that, I know that there is a question in here that we can start with, Ron. It says, you mentioned that carbon sequestration is a growing category of product that forests provide. Is there a way for private forest landowners to easily quantify how much carbon their forests hold?
Great question. And unfortunately, the answer is no, there is no easy way. It tends to be a fairly complex process to quantify the amount of carbon in a particular stand. The other thing that I would say is where carbon and carbon sequestration is becoming more and more of I guess, if you will, a revenue stream for large landowners. I think it's from an economic standpoint, they're looking at new ways to maximize revenue streams, and so it tends to be really tied to large ownerships. When we get down to the smaller scale landowners, it becomes extremely difficult to figure out if it's really economically feasible for the small woodland landowner, and also the relatively large upfront capital investment it takes to quantify the amount of carbon. So it's not an easy process.
That makes sense. We have another one in here that is looking at how to get help and become more involved in getting other landowners in their area to know more about invasive management. Any thoughts on how to do that? It looks like they've worked with a few foresters before, but would like to boost engagement.
Yeah, I tell you, there's nothing better than the word of mouth, neighbors talking to neighbors and things in those regards. And so that's a real key way to engage or increase engagement. The peer network or the peer networks that are out there that I mentioned are also a good resource. They're pretty much tuned into that kind of stuff. So I would encourage, certainly looking into WOA, Wisconsin Woodland Owner Association. And then there are also a number of locally led conservation organizations that are weed management, conservancy groups out there, if you will, that are really focused on invasive species. Obviously, here at Wisconsin DNR, invasives are a huge issue for us. And so we also have programs out there that are available to help landowners minimize the impact of invasive species on their properties.
Excellent. Here's another one for you. It says, I'm interested in working to engage farmers who own woodlands in forestry management. Are you aware of past efforts to work with farmers on forestry issues, or have any insights in working with farmers on forestry topics?
That's a great question. I've often thought that one of our most untapped resources is farmers. Obviously, farmers own wood, right? Wood lots, if you will. One of the resources I've often felt was really an untapped resource is our local county extension agents. They really have sort of the line with the ag community. And so we've been trying to make inroads engaging with the local extension agents. Now, certainly we have a relationship with UW Extension, a forestry extension that is, but not necessarily with the ag extension folks. And so I think there's an untapped opportunity there. Absolutely. Good question.
Oh, are you ready for another one? What has the recent closing of pulp mills, or how has affected the forestry industry in the state? What has the recent closing of pulp mills affected the forestry industry in the state?
Yeah. Wow.
I told you.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
That's a really good question. We're certainly concerned about it. And here's why. Not only do we, DNR, have certain contracts out with contractors, loggers, if you will. We certainly want to, and that certainly affects, the type of work that we can get done, the sustainable forest management work that we can continue to get done. The challenge is that those contractors now don't really have any place to take the product, right? And so now you have this huge sort of accordion effect where, you know how it is, if you're, a person brakes in front, all of a sudden everyone else has got to kind of put the brakes on, right? So it's that kind of thing without having that market now, if you will, has a tremendous ripple effect in terms of what actually gets done on the ground. Now, for us, I think what's really key is being able to anticipate and be nimble and adapt to changing markets. And this is what's really crazy about the forest products market. It's really volatile. In some cases, it changes daily almost, it seems. And so you really have to be on top of things to understand, there's a certain market, that's now open for, whatever product. And so it's really about being able to adapt to that and reach out to those contractors who we know have that product that's now coming online, and being able to say, oh, can you go here? We now have a venue for you to take that product. So for us, it's really about, keeping our thumb on the pulse in terms of those changing markets. And that's kind of a dynamic endeavor for us.
Good. How about teachers? Is there a role you see K through 12 educators playing to help promote these programs?
Absolutely. We haven't really focused on the K through 12 group, if you will, at this point. It's really been focused on engaging new landowners. But certainly, again, another untapped resource and I think we've always had some level of, in some role, if you will, in the K through 12 community. I just don't think it's been as robust as it can be. Certainly through Gretchen, your shop and your work through PLT and LEAF, we have that connection. But yeah, I think there's certainly opportunities there.
One of the connections that I also see, so we know that LEAF was initially created to help or recognize that our students coming up through the K through 12 system will potentially be forest landowners themselves one day. So we want to make sure that they have some really good forestry information and an understanding about Wisconsin's forests. But then I think one of the neat connections that can be made is, so one of the things that our private landowners are getting when they contact that forester is that forest management assistance and the potential forest stewardship or forest management plan. And I think there's a good connection there with our schools that do have school forests, because we're wanting to make sure that our school forests also have those management plans in place. And we really strive as much as possible to make sure that students are involved in helping make those management plans so that they can see the efforts that go into that process and what does it entail to have a healthy forest and a sustainably managed forest. But yeah, it would be neat to be able to have some more of that promotional material to help their parents even understand where they can go for help.
So you just triggered a thought that I want to try and convey to the group here, and it's there are two issues that have certainly been part of my entire career, and so I'm now entering my 29th year in this career. And two of the single most largest issues that certainly I've dealt with and continue to deal with, although I think we're sort of seeing a transition, if you will, is the two issues of parcelization and fragmentation, right? It's a huge issue. The other one is intergenerational transfer of ownership. And so to key in on what you just indicated, Gretchen, is really about so current landowners, what are they going to do with their property? Are their children going to inherit it? Now, there's a huge dynamic about, some of them don't have an interest in owning the land. And so, so what are the parents going to do? Are they going to sell it? And if they do, what does that mean? If they do pass it down to their children, now we've got essentially a different group that we need to figure out how to work with and make sure that they understand, what that means for them. And so this intergenerational transfer of ownership, again, has been around for as long as I can remember. I think when we look at what some of the most recent figures are telling us, and Wisconsin tends to track pretty close to the national average, which is that the average ownership age is in, kind of the early 60s. And certainly Wisconsin is right in there. The average age of the owner here in Wisconsin is about 61, maybe 62 years old. And so what happens when, dad, unfortunately, passes away? Now mom's left holding the responsibility of trying to figure out what to do with that property, and ultimately, what the children are, what they want to do in terms of passing it on, either selling it or passing it on. And so there's a tremendous challenge there from that standpoint as well. And I would say that corner is not. It's always been sort of impending, right? We've known it's been out there for a long time. It's it's this impending intergenerational transfer of ownership issue. I would say that we're actually seeing it happen now, and so we're really concerned about that.
Good. Sorry there, my screen didn't want to unmute. Another question regarding fire. Do many private landowners use fire as a management tool, or are there fire programs for private landowners?
It's a good question. It's a challenging question. Certainly fire is a management tool. Now on our own state-owned lands, we use fire to help manage resources through prescribed burning and things in those regards. It becomes a little bit more challenging on private land in that, there's certainly some liability issues there in terms of, well, okay, if they start the fire and it gets out of control, now we've got some challenges and issues there that we have to deal with. So it doesn't happen. It's not used as much on privately owned lands as it is on other ownerships because of some of those issues and challenges.
That makes sense. So someone else has a little follow-up. The fire comment made them think of prairie restoration. It's interesting to consider land management in a holistic way, balancing forest and prairie. Do the educational programs of the groups listed include this perspective?
I think so. Certainly the Leopold Foundation does. Yeah, I think so. We're always looking at, when we work with landowners, for example, it's really about understanding where they are, and when I say understanding where they are, it's really about understanding what is it they value about the property, right? Why do they have it? Some have it for making money. Some own it just because they like to have that place to go for solitude and things, recharge, if you will. Some of them own the property for a legacy, for example. So it's really about taking a look at what their objectives are long-term in terms of managing it. And a lot of it is really related to the comprehensive wholesale management of the resources that are not just forestry, if you will.
Good. That's all the questions I saw. Does anybody else have a question still floating around in their mind out there? We've had a little bit of conversation about the recorded presentations will be posted to our YouTube channel, but then we'll also send the link, and Jenny, who introduced herself earlier, will also make it available in our communication tools as well. So once we're able to get everything downloaded and saved and recorded where it needs to be, then we can let everybody know. Otherwise, we are just about at that 1 o'clock mark. A few more minutes.
Let me just check in. So I had kind of a quiz question early on in my presentation.
Yes.
Anyone care to guess what is the leading economic contributor to Wisconsin's economy? Do we have an answer for that?
I did not see one in the chat yet.
Am I holding you in suspense?
We have a guess of dairy or tourism.
Dairy. It's dairy. Yes.
Excellent.
The dairy industry. Any guess in terms of the economic contribution of what the dairy industry brings into Wisconsin for extra credit? $45 billion.
Wow, that much.
It's huge.
Huh.
Yeah, huge.
That's awesome. I'm going to throw in one other just quick question, and then I think we're about at the end. It said you had some neat marketing materials in the billboard. Have you thought of making something like that on a small scale that private landowners can post?
Good question. I don't know that we have, but I'm interested to know more about what that would look like. That's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. I'm not seeing any more questions, but we have lots of great compliments on there and thanking you as well. So later if you get a chance, you could log in and look at the chats. But I agree. Thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in today. Thanks, Ron, for providing us with so much great information. Like I mentioned before, it will be recorded and we'll post that link as to how to find that in the future. And take a look at the other upcoming sessions if you want to know more about our forests in Wisconsin and forestry in Wisconsin. And with that, I think we'll sign off. All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone. It
All
was
right,
great.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Have a great day, everybody.